On behalf of Children and Family Futures and the Family Drug Court Learning Academy, welcome to our webinar presentation. Special thanks to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, who supports the National Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance Program. For more information about Children and Family Futures, the Learning Academy, and the Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance Program, please visit our website at www.cffutures.org. We hope you find this presentation helpful as you strengthen your partnerships and improve outcomes in your family drug court.
Hello, my name is Kirsten Freskin, and I want to welcome you to our presentation, The Top 5 Challenges in Responding to Participant Behavior in Family Treatment Courts and How to Solve Them. During this presentation, we will count down the top 5 challenges commonly reported by FTCs in responding to participant behaviors. We have developed this list based on our work with dozens of sites and from the hundreds of technical assistance requests we receive. We have also included content from the upcoming Family Treatment Court Best Practice Standards, which will be released here very soon. Referred to in the Best Practice Standards as therapeutic responses, we know this practice area represents an array of challenges for FTC teams nationwide. We hope this presentation will be a valuable resource as you implement this important standard. Even if you are not connected to an FTC program, this presentation will provide some specific strategies that apply to behavioral modification when serving families in the child welfare system affected by parental substance use disorders. We are offering a team discussion guide that provides some questions to explore with your team or on your own. You can access this and other helpful resources on this presentation's webpage located on our website at www.cffutures.org. Before we get started, I want to take a few minutes to explain why we're using the term therapeutic responses, because I'm guessing many of you thought you were going to watch a presentation on sanctions and incentives. When developing the National Family Treatment Court Best Practice Standards, we decided that the standard needed to focus on responding to behaviors, and that those responses should always be therapeutic, intended to support the positive behavior change and family well-being. Also, responses should be about engaging or re-engaging the parent in treatment and other services that support family recovery and reunification goals. This is essential because even when the judge orders something that may feel like a sanction, the goal should never be to punish, but rather to change a behavior that is not going to help the individual achieve stable recovery and reunify with their children. It's also important for the team to be problem-solving in their approach by asking why the participant failed to meet a particular target behavior, and then formulate solutions to support the participant to fulfill that goal. You will hear more about the importance of the therapeutic and problem-solving approach throughout this presentation. So let's get started. Number 5. We aren't sure if we even need to have incentives and sanctions. Some family treatment courts have moved away from responding to behaviors altogether, thinking that it isn't necessary. These courts may have had a challenging time instituting or maintaining a set of structured responses and have adjusted to not having them. Other programs provide responses to behavior only sporadically or just focus on rewarding positive behavior. It's important to consistently deliver a range of responses to behaviors commonly found in the recovery process, both productive or good and the potentially harmful or bad. We have heard about FTC teams that gave little or no response to the parents' actions or inactions. These parents believed they were doing great when they actually were not, and they only learned about the concerns when the reunification services time clock expired, and the parents were now facing termination of their parental rights. In order to ensure that your parents are truly on track and making real progress, it will be imperative that you be goal-oriented, and responses help you do just that. Let's explore 3 key steps in becoming goal-oriented. First, it's essential that you determine the specific observable behaviors that are consistent with recovery, reunification, and resolution of the child welfare case. These are behaviors that you want to reinforce with incentives or rewards. Each response you deliver should be logically tied to these identified behaviors. Then, do the same for behaviors that interfere with or are inconsistent with recovery, reunification, and resolution of the child welfare case plan. These are the behaviors you want to discourage or eliminate through sanctions. Remember, the goal of sanctions is always to decrease such behaviors rather than just seeking to punish participants. Next, after clarifying behavioral expectations, it will be important for your team to reliably determine and continually assess the effectiveness of imposed responses to ensure the best possible outcomes. Employing a system of graduated responses starting from low, medium, to high magnitude will help you achieve that. Research indicates that lower magnitude incentives should be provided for proximal achievements. Proximal achievements are those behavioral expectations that the participant is already capable of meeting. For example, for a parent in the early phases of the program, simply showing up for treatment, court, and urinalysis would receive lots of praise and reinforcement, while those same behaviors later in the program would be acknowledged but not lauded. Again, early in the program, this same parent may have a positive drug screen. The FTC would respond to the positive drug screen, but would apply a low magnitude response because abstinence is a distal behavior, expected later, but not in early recovery. Lower magnitude responses need to be strong enough to be noticed, but not so strong that they are perceived as overly harsh or unfair, or that leave no room to increase intensity. As participants move through the phases of your program, the goals that were distal in the early phases, such as abstinence, should now become proximal. In other words, what was seen as difficult initially should now be more achievable. Drug use in later phases may generate a higher magnitude response or sanction, but it may also signal the need to investigate if a different level or type of treatment is needed. The last key step here is to follow through by being consistent in your responses. A consistent approach on your part will create a sense of certainty for participants as they make the connection between behavior and consequence. Knowing ahead of time that there will be a response to their actions or inactions gives participants control and fosters a sense of responsibility while strengthening motivation to perform the behavior. In addition to being consistent, be immediate in your response. A basic principle of behavior modification is that responses are significantly more effective when they are delivered as soon as possible after the behavior. The impact of responses is diminished by any delay between the behavior and purposeful response to that behavior. An immediate response can sometimes require the team to make decisions in between staffings and hearings. Your policies and procedures should include communication protocols and delegation of authority procedures to ensure that team members communicate with each other about participant behavior in between hearings. If a response is necessary, make sure team members are informed of the behavior, have an opportunity to discuss and justify the appropriate response, and then identify who will inform the participant of the response. So how do we pull all these concepts together? A helpful exercise can be found in a worksheet in the Family Treatment Court Planning Guide. First, identify the positive behaviors you want to reinforce. Make sure that you connect those behaviors with a specific goal. Then, identify a range of responses, making sure these are logically linked to the behavior and the goal. Finally, identify the impact that response will have on the child and the parent-child relationship. Do the same with the negative behaviors you want to change and the sanctions that you will implement to achieve those specific goals. Number 4, how can we take an individualized approach and yet still be fair? Let's first talk about why an individualized approach is important. To be individual. Although the FTC team must reliably detect and respond to all target behaviors, outcomes are significantly better when the drug court team has a reasonable degree of discretion to modify the consequence in light of the facts of the situation. This approach is consistent with legal and ethical requirements that drug court judges exercise independent discretion when resolving factual controversies and imposing consequences. When establishing a range of responses, your team should maintain the flexibility to tailor responses for each of your participants. Remember, you do not want to create a rigid set of responses, but rather offer a set of guidelines your team can reference when deciding how best to support real behavior change. A response that might motivate or deter one participant may not have the same effect on another. By tailoring responses to the individual, you personalize your reactions and strengthen the relationship between the participant and the team. To do this, assess each participant's strengths and needs to determine whether that individual is capable of completing what he or she is expected to do, and then if he or she is capable of understanding how the actions or inactions has resulted in the particular response. One powerful strategy is to gather from families their ideas on potential responses that would be particularly meaningful and culturally appropriate. When considering the participants' capacity to comply and meet behavioral expectations, the team should try to understand the participants' motivations and stage of change. Meeting participants where they are at with respect to their substance use and other changes needed to achieve stable recovery and regain custody is a critical tool to successfully engage participants. Many of you might be familiar with the 5 stages of change. The critical assumption that underpins this model is that behavioral changes do not happen in one step, but through a series of distinct, predictable stages. Identifying what stage a participant is in may help your team better understand their readiness and capacity to meet your expectations. Be fair. Also known as procedural fairness, this important concept involves whether participants perceive the proceedings to be fair. Studies have shown that participants who feel they are being treated fairly do better than those who do not. Participants are also most likely to react favorably to an adverse judgment or sanction if they believe that the procedures to determine that judgment were fair. A key aspect of procedural fairness is giving participants the opportunity to be heard. Your FTC should give participants an opportunity to express their perspectives on their behavior, disagreements about facts, and other relevant issues. According to adult drug court research, outcomes are best when participants have a reasonable opportunity to explain their side of the circumstances, are treated in an equivalent manner to similar people in similar circumstances, and are treated with respect and dignity throughout the process. When the individual feels something is fair and they were heard, they are less likely to engage in non-compliant or illegal behavior and more likely to reduce drug use. In contrast, when these conditions are not met, participants are less likely to cooperate with orders and therefore more likely to continue to engage in substance use and other non-compliant behaviors. Keep in mind that fairness does not mean treating everyone exactly alike. As we mentioned, the same incentive or sanction could have very different impacts and be received differently depending on the participant's life. A person's perception of fairness has more to do with the clarity of expectations, the consistency with which the responses are issued, the opportunity for the person to be heard, and his or her overall feelings of trust of the team and the judge who deliver the responses. Every member of the FTC team must be able to articulate why the team imposed a particular response for one participant and a different response for another. For example, a team might explain that responses to a positive drug screen might be different for a participant who admits his or her substance use and re-engages in behaviors consistent with recovery, than for one who lies about their use and acts in ways that are inconsistent with recovery. Taking an individualized approach yet maintaining fairness will require ongoing and open communication with participants. Be sure that your participant handbook addresses this approach, and your team and judge provide opportunities for participants to share their concerns about any perceptions of unfairness. Now let's take a few moments to explore the use of community service to tie together the concepts we've talked about so far. As you seek to become goal-oriented, your team should consider how community service can be used more effectively and thoughtfully. First, participants should see serving the community as an honor. Community service is often ordered in criminal proceedings as a means for the individual to repay damage done and expenses incurred by the community. In this case, community service is a logical response. Some FTCs have community service as a standard expectation for all participants. It's a way for the parent to engage or re-engage with his or her community in a positive way. In this way, community service relates to the purpose and community domains of SAMHSA's 4 domains of recovery. In the FTC, community service may be a logical response to fill a parent's time if he or she is continuing to engage in drug-seeking and drug-using behaviors. The FTC needs to help that parent find other uses for their time. Community service can also help an individual who is disconnected from employment gain the job experience of showing up on time and doing what a supervisor asks of them to do. The community service site can become a job reference. Being thoughtful will help you connect this commonly used response to achieve desired behaviors. As you seek to become problem-solving, FTC teams should consider why the individual may be struggling to engage in a particular behavior. The parent who misses drug tests or programming may actually have transportation issues. A mother of a 3-week-old infant may be suffering from postpartum depression, and receiving a sanction may push her further into depression. A problem-solving approach would lead the team to think about supports that could assist participants with making these appointments. As you can see, taking on a problem-solving and trauma-informed approach and seeking to understand each participant's situation is an essential part of being more thoughtful and responsive to the needs of your families. Number 3. We don't have money to fund incentives. We need new ideas for rewards that don't involve money. Many drug courts are stretched thin for resources to purchase tangible rewards. We understand that this is a real problem, but here are a few thoughts. First, some of the most effective rewards don't cost anything or cost very little. We all want to be recognized for doing well. Don't underestimate the power of a simple good job. A reduction in court appearances is also a powerful incentive for compliant behavior. Certificates that you can print in your office are also effective motivators. Any of these, when sincerely earned and given, will be meaningful to your participants. One low-cost strategy commonly used by FTCs is the fishbowl. Participants earn opportunities to draw prizes from a fishbowl or other containers for their accomplishments, such as a week of complete adherence to their case plan. Most of the draws earn only a written declaration of success, such as a certificate of accomplishment for the week signed by the judge. Others earn small prizes of roughly $5 to $10 in value, and a small percentage earn larger prizes such as DVDs, tickets to sporting events, or clothing for work or school. Research indicates the fishbowl procedure can produce comparable or better outcomes at a lower cost than programs that reward participants for every achievement. The findings showed that the mere opportunity to participate in getting an immediate reward can be effective in changing behavior. We've developed a running list of low-cost incentives that FTC programs are implementing. Some of my favorites are picture frames the participant can use for family photos, personal hygiene products, Catch You Being Good certificates that any team member can give a participant when they witness healthy choices, or other small tokens of recognition. When you are formulating low-cost incentives, remember to include family activities and services that support the family's and children's needs. Examples include certificates to purchase a gift for the children, opportunities to take the children on a family-friendly outing, and books and toys that help the participant engage in positive parenting. If the parent and child are separated, consider giving 2 copies of a particular storybook. The parent can call and read the book aloud as the child turns the pages in the foster or kinship parent's home. Also, make sure you recognize strong parenting behaviors such as attending school meetings, talking with the children's therapist, or co-parenting with the foster parent or relative caregiver. Your team should never use family time or visitation as a reward, incentive, or sanction. Visitation is a right and need of families in the child welfare system and should never be used as punishment. Reducing visitation can punish the child as well as the parent. If visitation is to be reduced, the decision must be based upon safety and risk considerations for the child. As you search for low-cost and creative ways to fund incentives, seize the opportunity to expand your connections and partnerships within your local community to donate or sponsor specific initiatives. We've included a list. A couple of my favorites are certificates for beauty services such as hair or nails, art supplies, gym memberships, or any family outing activities such as a movie, sports, or other recreational activity. Local faith groups, the Bar Association, women's groups, or other community groups such as the Ruritan, Moose, or Optimist clubs are often excited to partner with your treatment court to provide tangible rewards. Share with these groups what your FTC program is about, the life-changing outcomes you are making, and the specific needs you have to better serve participant children and families. Number 2. We are struggling about whether to keep using jail as a sanction. The use of jail sanctions in FTCs continues to be a hot topic of debate. First, it's important to remember that many of the earliest FTCs simply looked to adult drug courts as a model for their operations. Since the use of jail was seen as an effective sanction in criminal court, many assumed that it would be just as effective in FTCs. Experience has shown, however, that the 2 courts are different and that successful practices in criminal court do not necessarily ensure success in FTC. The use of jail poses specific challenges and concerns for family treatment courts. Many jurisdictions see the use of jail as an inappropriate sanction in FTCs, since dependency proceedings are civil matters, not criminal. Other critics cite due process issues, since the judge cannot legally sentence an FTC participant to serve a jail sentence without a hearing with notice. The use of jail is part of a graduated approach in adult criminal court, where increasing jail days is commonly done. For FTC participants, however, jail time is not the most serious consequence, but rather the loss of parental rights. The impact of incarceration on the family, especially for children, is another important consideration. Therefore, your team should be mindful of how each of your responses impacts the family. Since family treatment courts are about treating families, it's important to always be mindful of the impact a particular response will have on the family unit and relationships. This is where the FTC model is unique, since one of the goals is for the long-term success of the parent-child relationship and family recovery and stability. It's important to consider how responses will either promote or negatively impact family relationships. Lastly, using jail as a sanction can interfere with the parent's ability to meet other dependency court requirements. The parent may lose his or her employment or be unable to participate in services. Incarceration may get the parent's attention, but it may also reduce his or her chances to turn around the other aspects of their lives. Furthermore, any interruptions in the parent's life will affect the statutory timelines within which parents must reunify with their children. Many FTC judges have found that jail is unnecessary and that emphasizing the shortness of time, the necessity of working hard on the case plan, and the consequences of losing permanent custody of one's children are often enough to motivate parents. Jurisdictions that have stopped the use of jail have had to design alternative high-magnitude responses. As we mentioned earlier, the most serious consequence for FTC families is not jail time, but rather the loss of parental rights. Therefore, some teams require the parent to write a goodbye letter to their child as a way to logically connect behavior to the response and the seriousness of losing parental rights. Instead of using jail, many FTCs have taken on a problem-solving approach as an effective way to engage parents and reinforce positive behaviors. Rather than consequencing a parent for doing or not doing something, the team should ask why the parent is or is not doing that behavior. For instance, why is the individual not attending treatment? The answer to that question should drive how the team responds. It may be that the level of care is not meeting the parent's needs. The parent may need a higher or lower level of care, or may need to be assessed for medication or other complementary psychiatric or medical intervention. Although it may not be possible to understand completely the why, by taking on a problem-solving approach, it gives your team important opportunities to identify barriers and formulate meaningful solutions to help families succeed. Number 1. We don't know when to terminate a participant from the FTC program. This question is very common and perhaps one of the most difficult decisions your team must face. If there's one thing we know about treatment, it is this. The longer we keep a person in treatment, the greater the probability of a successful outcome. Family treatment courts should do everything possible to keep families in treatment. Why? As we mentioned earlier, for family treatment courts, the stakes are high, very high. You might even say that FTC parents have more to lose than someone in adult drug court who faces only jail time as a result of termination. Families who are terminated from FTCs face the potential permanent loss of parental rights in the dependency proceedings. Given both these high stakes and the outcomes achieved through successful program participation and completion, engaging and keeping parents in the FTC is worth the effort. Therefore, your FTC should make program termination almost impossible to achieve. In most cases, the most effective course of action will be to adjust a non-responsive participant's treatment or supervision requirements, or to apply graduated responses. Termination should only occur after all therapeutic adjustments and a graduated approach towards responses have been exhausted. First, let's talk about treatment adjustments. Treatment adjustments are made when the current level of care is not meeting the parent's needs. The parent may need a higher or lower level of care or may need to be assessed for medication or other types of treatment. When a participant fails to meet treatment expectations, case plan goals, or phase requirements, the treatment professionals, in consultation with members of the FTC team, should first consider whether the treatment plan is meeting the participant's clinical needs. If not, the treatment professionals implement a treatment adjustment. Treatment adjustments are particularly important when responding to a lapse or relapse to drug use. We see this often when a participant relapses soon after a phase promotion or right before they're ready to reunify with their children. When relapse happens during these points in time, the parent may conclude wrongly that they have accomplished nothing in treatment and they will never be successful at recovery. This all-or-nothing thinking is counterproductive and may put them at further risk for a full relapse or for dropping out of treatment. In response, teams have sometimes phased back participants after a relapse. Research has demonstrated that demoting someone to the first phase or an earlier phase may exacerbate what is referred to as the abstinence violation effect, which is fueled by guilt and shame. The weight of this guilt often correlates to the amount of time spent in recovery leading up to the relapse. Since relapse is often a sign that services were reduced too abruptly or were insufficient, the appropriate course of action is to keep the participant in their current phase while increasing their supports and expectations. This may include increasing court appearances or check-ins with their assigned case manager, which may equate to the expectations of the previous phase. Once the individual has stabilized and demonstrated that they can be successful with fewer court-ordered restrictions, the behavior expectations can return to those encompassed by the current phase. By planning for more effective and successful phase transitions, you are counteracting the abstinence violation effect and helping the participant learn from the experience and avoid making the same mistake again. Part of being therapeutically sound is to ensure decision-making and delivery is properly executed by the right team members. FTCs are collaborative in the sense that they work together by leveraging each team member's skills and expertise. In other words, remember to stay in your lane. You should still discuss the recommended responses as a team, but remember it is the judge who makes the final decision of the court-ordered response and delivers it during the FTC hearing. Discuss the treatment needs of the family as a team, but remember it is the treatment provider who makes the final decision regarding any changes in treatment. Altering a treatment plan from the bench is not employing best practices, especially if the infraction is not a treatment-related issue. Finally, your team must determine what behaviors, conditions, or extent of noncompliance will result in termination from your FTC program. Discuss and formulate a response to this sentence. A participant will be terminated from the Family Treatment Court program when? Most often, participants are terminated if they are unable or unwilling to adhere to the Family Treatment Court's expectations or repeatedly engage in behavior that is inconsistent with the mission, goals, and objectives of the FTC. The participant should be terminated if he or she poses an immediate risk to public safety or if the court case no longer includes reunification as a goal. It is only when the full range of responses have been applied and have failed to change participant behavior that termination should be considered. The FTC may not be the right fit for the person, but most likely there is not a more comprehensive intervention available in your community. In conclusion, responding to participant behavior is an essential component of an effective FTC by holding parents accountable and helping them achieve their goals of recovery, reunification, and permanency. Working toward these goals is not an easy journey for families. Their struggles and setbacks will test your patience and challenge your resolve, but they will also overwhelm you with their success and achievement and remind you why you pursued your career in the first place. Seeing families finally engage in treatment, reunify with their children, and commit themselves to a life of recovery is worth all the effort this work demands. Working in a family treatment court, as many of you have testified, has been the most rewarding experience of your professional careers. Because of your dedication and hard work, you are changing the futures of children and families in your communities. We hope you found this presentation helpful as you re-examine your practice and work towards stronger partnerships and improved outcomes for families. Again, we encourage you to download the team discussion guide as well as our Take Action guide for some next steps. Finally, Feel free to contact us at fdc@cffutures.org if we can be of any further assistance. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to our webinar presentation. To further your learning, please download the webinar discussion guide, which provides questions for your team to explore and next steps and resources to move your team forward. Again, for more information about Children and Family Futures, the Learning Academy, and the FDC TTA program, please visit our website, our Family Drug Court blog, or email us. Thank you, and we hope to see you again here at the Family Drug Court Learning Academy.